Hi, it's Linda Adler-Kastner, Program Chair for 4Cs 2016. I'm here with Elizabeth Narvaez. Please wave, Elizabeth.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Graduate Research Assistant, working on 4Cs 2016 as well. And in this session, we're going to talk about one of the Taking Action workshops being offered for 4Cs 2016, the one on creating action plans. And that'll be facilitated by Cathy Fleischer. So in this session, we'll talk with Cathy about what's going to happen in that session. Thanks,
Linda. Good to be here with you.
Okay, so we're both going to be looking down periodically, viewers of the video, so you know, at our questions. So Cathy, first, who are you, what brought you to this work, and what makes you so passionate about it?
It's a great question. So I'm a professor at Eastern Michigan University, where I teach courses in writing and courses in English education. And I'm a former high school teacher as well. So for many years, I have been one of those people who got very upset when I heard some of the things that are being said about teachers. And there have been a lot of bad things said about teachers over the years. This is not just a new thing. And I would always come home and complain about things that were being said about teachers. And why don't they listen more to us? Why don't they, when they're making changes in the legislature, why don't they listen to what we're saying? So as it turns out, my husband, Andy Bucksbaum, is an environmental leader, and he has done a lot of community organizing over the years. And he would always say to me, Cathy, you know what you should do? Blah, blah, blah. And for many years, it was just blah, blah, blah to me. I didn't ever really listen to what he was saying. But finally, I started thinking, maybe he knows something about this that I should be listening to. And so it got me started thinking about community organizing and the connections between community organizers and teachers. And so I decided to do a research project surrounding this. So I started interviewing community organizers from a lot of different fields. So people from health, people from politics, people from environmental, and started learning about what they do to try to organize for change. And then I started thinking about what the teachers I know who have helped make change, what they do, and started seeing overlap between these two groups of people. And this led me to write a book called Teachers Organizing for Change, quite a long time ago, but it was my beginning steps into thinking about some of this. Over the years, then, I've been continuing to work with teachers to have them think about these issues and to think about what they can do for change. I've taught graduate courses in this, and I've also facilitated workshops in this. So I have a group of teachers right now that I'm working a lot with in these advocacy measures to try to have them identify what can they do to get their voices out there in the public.
Terrific. Tell us a story about a successful organizing or facilitating effort that you've been involved in, and what really made it successful.
Okay. Let me mention two things. So the first one was kind of my introduction to a lot of this. This was many years ago, and I was sitting at a state board of education meeting in which the board was considering some changes in curriculum, some changes to some really good ways of thinking about teaching and learning. This was about 4 curriculums ago. And I watched at that meeting as teacher after teacher got up to testify in front of the State Board of Education. And I watched the board rudely not listen to anything they were saying. The board, they were on their phones, they were walking off stage, they were completely not paying attention. Then I saw a parent get up to testify. And as the parent started to testify, you could hear a pin drop. It was so quiet. That they were attending to this parent in ways that they weren't attending to the teachers. Now, this particular parent who got up had clutched in her hand a little booklet that one of the teachers that I had worked with had written for parents. It was a book that explained why she was teaching and the way she was teaching, and it used examples from children's classrooms so they could really see so the parents could really see, what the teacher was doing and why. And so as the parent began to testify, the parent was quoting from this book. So this was an interesting lesson for me and a huge lesson for me because what it showed me is we have to work with others in order to make change. So it isn't just that we can say something and someone will listen to us, but we have to develop allies, we have to develop community, and we have to talk to other people whose voices may be heard in certain forums when ours are not heard as well. So that was a really important story. The other one I want to share is about, as I mentioned, I teach courses in advocacy for teachers. And a couple of years ago, I had a woman in my course named Beth Sham. And Beth is a teacher. And she was really struggling with deciding whether to keep on teaching. This was a hard time for her. The testing regime had come in, and she felt like she wasn't doing any more what she wanted to do as a teacher. So she was struggling. And for her project for the class, she started out by saying, I think what I want to do is look at why teachers are leaving the profession. And we talked a lot about that, and I helped her craft a message that was more positive, which was, why are teachers staying in the profession? It's a subtle difference, but I think it's a really important one. So Beth decided, as she started thinking about what strategies can I use to get this message out there, she started tweeting and emailing and Facebooking teachers around the country that she knew and asked them why they stay in teaching. And she asked each of them to write their message on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper and hold it up in front of them, right? And send her a video of that, or just a shot of that. She put them together into a video, and it was this incredible moment. The video is stunning, like absolutely stunning. And it's had about 10,000 hits so far. So it's kind of gone viral. And she also has developed a blog called Use Your Outside Voice for teachers, so teachers can start thinking. So this was, I think, a really wonderful example of how Beth learned how to do this and how to find a message and find how to get the message out there and to reach a lot of people.
So what principles lead you to be an effective organizer? And what principles do you think that folks need to develop or remember for them to be most effective?
So I'm really attracted to the work of Marshall Gantz and his notion of public narrative. And what Gantz means when he talks about that is this idea of moving from the story of self to the story of us to the story of now. I think that's really important because we all have these personal stories, and a lot of times I think in organizing, people just want to tell their stories as if just telling their stories will make change. But I think what Gantz helps us understand is the way this works best is if you start thinking about your stories and then in community with others, you try to figure out what are the values underlying those stories, what do you have in common with other people, and what can you do together that you couldn't necessarily do alone. And together that helps us go on to this story of now, how we can make change. So that's one principle that's really important. So I think connected to that is this notion of finding allies. And that's the thing that teachers that I'm working with right now have discovered as the most important thing in the work that they do. They've started talking about this as sowing the seeds of change. And the way they sow the seeds of change is they try to find allies beyond who might be the usual suspects. So one teacher that I'm working with is very conscious of every time he's at a faculty meeting, he sits with a different teacher every time, and it's often not the people he knows agrees with him, but he'll sit with somebody different and he'll just take a minute to talk and chat about his project and what he's thinking about and trying to get done. So I think this developing allies is so important in this. And the third idea I think is really important is this notion of anytime we have this long-term goal, there's short-term and middle-term goals that help us get to that long-term one. And that's really important because sometimes if we just focus on the long-term one, we want to get rid of testing, or, we want to get rid of this or that, or we want to change how we think about this or that. If we're just doing the long-term goal at the end, we don't recognize these small goals along the way as being incredibly important. And they are really important, and they help us feel success in what we're doing so we have the confidence to go on to the next ones.
Terrific. So in the workshop that you're going to facilitate, what can people expect? What's going to happen?
So in my workshop, we're going to be talking about how to create an action plan. And it's going to be a pretty hands-on session in which we hope that people will actually develop plans that they can use and go back to their home settings with. It'll be focused on this idea. How do you effectively tell your specific message to a specific audience to achieve specific results? I often talk about it as how do you effectively tell message X to audience Y to achieve Z result. And that's what we're going to be working on. So we're going to be talking about strategies and tactics and how to figure out the best strategies to reach those particular audiences for that particular purpose. We'll be talking a lot about how do you move beyond, just writing a letter to a representative. I think that's where we go a lot now. Let's write a letter to our representative. Let's do a phone call. Let's do a tweet. And while that certainly is one strategy, that's not the only strategy. So we're going to be talking about multiple strategies and how you can find the best strategies and tactics to fit your plan. And we'll also be talking about short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. What is the final thing you want to achieve and what might be some goals along the way to get there.
So what will be useful for folks to think about in advance of your session, and what might they want to bring with them to your session?
So I think this session would work best if you thought a little bit about an issue that you care about, And that if you've maybe attended some of the other sessions that are going to be offered, they're going to help people hone their message into a particular frame or a particular way of looking at that. So if you could bring that in, then we can work from that message and from that framed message into how to develop an action plan. So I'd also say maybe start thinking about the audiences that you want to reach, the context that you're in, so we can try to come up with strategies and tactics that really fit your own context.
And what else should people know? Is there any background information you think will be important for them? Anything else you'd like them to know before their session?
Well, I think the most important thing is what I just said, coming in with some ideas of what you might want to do. And we'll take it from there and figure out the rest from there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Cathy. Thanks for talking with us.